I am excited about this morning to dive in. I've really been enjoying, I don't know about you, this chapter 13 series that we've been doing. How many have been a part of it so far? I probably should ask who's not been a part of it so we can single them out. But, it's been great. This is week 4 of our chapter 13 series talking about love. I've never done a teaching series in the history of being in full-time vocational ministry on this chapter. We've talked about it, but never done a full series on it. So I really think God is going to do some amazing things in your heart this morning if he hasn't already. And before we do that, though, really quickly, I want to give a quick plug. If you want to learn to grow in understanding the supernatural that is God, you can't take the supernatural out of who God is. Okay? When God touches you, his super comes into your natural. So your life is called to be a representation of supernatural at some level. And, I have a passion to help people learn to recognize the voice of God for themselves, but then also learn how to administrate that to somebody else. And we are starting, and it's kind of like organic, like I've been saying to some of our team. The last 2 weeks we've been doing it, but 8:55 a.m. on Sundays, we are doing these mini teachings and training sessions on really learning how to release the supernatural from our lives into our circumstance, but also to people in our lives. To love them better, okay? To love them better. So if you want to come, doesn't matter if you're on the team or not, I want to welcome you to come. 8:55. You want to grow, you want to be equipped a little bit. We don't have office space right now yet, so this is going to become somewhere, a place in a pocket during the week that we invest and do some discipleship and mentoring in areas that I wouldn't address on a Sunday. So I'd love to invite you out and just show up. 8:55 next Sunday. We're going to be in the auditorium. It's going to be a great time. A little bit of a recap of the last 3 weeks. Week 1, Tommy Green, who is our guest speaker, was here, opened up our chapter 13 series talking about loving God with everything. Week 2, I talked about how nothing else matters but love, and that we are called to not lose our love when it comes to being intelligent, becoming, really gifted, having everything and having all this spiritual maturity. We can have all of that, but if we do or represent that without love, we really have nothing. Nothing else really matters. Week 3, we talked about from the subject of being held hostage, dealing with the demands and expectations that imprison us, that come often from people and that often come from us towards people. And about how to release yourself from those expectations and demands. But this week we're going to jump into 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 7. So we're going to stay in that verse. So go to verse 7 if you have a Bible, or you can look on the screen. It says, Paul says, love bears all things. Everyone say all things. Love bears all things regardless of what comes. Love believes all things, looking for the best in each other. By the way, the Amplified Version is one of the best translations of the Aramaic language, which was the language spoken in this time. Okay, even though the New Testament's translated from Greek, the language spoken was Aramaic, and so this Amplified Version, it amplifies specific points and nuances of the text, but it's also a better translation of the language of the day, okay? So love bears all things regardless of what comes, believes all things, looking for the best in each one, hopes all things, remaining steadfast during difficult times, endures all things without weakening. We could leave right now. That was enough for you to digest. Powerful, powerful. I've said it over and over again. One of the only things you're going to be loved or tested on when you die is, did you learn to love? It wasn't like, show me all your success, show me all your money, show me all that stuff. No, it's like, did you learn to love with all of that you had? That's what's going to be asked of you. Did you learn to love? Did you love? That's the only thing that matters. Notice that in this text, though, the phrase all things is spoken 4 times. Very important. And I want to talk about today 4 different aspects that are attached to love when it comes to the all things in life that surround our life. So if you're taking notes, write this down. My message title, if you've already figured it out, probably is All Things. Very creative, isn't it? All Things. And I want to talk about the BBHE. Everyone say BBHE. I say that because I want you to remember that. I want you to remember when you're tested. I want you to remember when you're going through a hard time, the BBHE. The BB, can I say it again? The BBHE. Say it fast 5 times. The BBHE, the BBHE, the BBHE, the BBHE, the BBHE. Okay. Now it's in you. Okay. It's locked inside of you. Okay. So when you're tested, your love meter is tested. I want you to remember the BB, what? HE. What is it? Okay. There you go. I want you to say it. I want you to get used to it because I want it to be something in your mindset. Let me read the same verse in verse 7 out of the Passion Translation. It says, love is a safe place of shelter. Love is a safe place of shelter, for it never stops believing the best for others. Love never takes failure as defeat. Love that. That's like mind-blowing. I love that translation. Love never takes defeat as failure. How many have been tempted to accept defeat as I've failed forever? Every one of us, right? At some level, we've been defeated in an area, struggled in an area, given into another area that we've conquered at one point in our life. We felt defeated, so we start believing it's permanent failure. Failure has permanently made residence within our soul, and there's no hope for change. Every one of us at some level have gone through that or are going through that presently right now. Love never takes failure as defeat. I love this. For it never gives up. It never gives up. Man, love never gives up. Sometimes I think love can look like stubbornness from a negative standpoint, but it's actually not. It's just a revelation of love that never quits, that never gives in, that never gives up. How many know some perseverant people? Only a few. Love never gives up. It never quits. Such a hard thing in our society today, though, right? With marriages breaking down, hear about it all the time. We fall in and out of love, which if you were here the first couple of weeks, we talked about how you can't fall in love. And because you can't fall in love, you can't fall out of love, because love is not a feeling that leads you into something. Love is a choice. Jesus didn't fall in love with you. He is love. He doesn't love, he is love. It's just who he is. He can't stop. It can't stop. So even if you reject him, you slap him around, you bury his face in the sand, he's just like, I still love you, man. I still love you. I'm never going to stop loving you. You could reject me till the day you die. My love remains the same. You have an invitation from me loving you to accept it or not. It's just, he is love. So I want to talk about the 4 things, the 4 elements or aspects of love that needs to be applied to all things in life that really become the reflection as to whether you are loving or not. Now, if you remember one of the definitions, there are 3 working Greek definitions found in the New Testament about love. There are other in ancient Greek, about 6. But in the New Testament, there are 3 that we went through on the second week. And one of the ones that we highlighted, the highest level of love, is the Greek word agape. And it's the unconditional, selfless love, even if you're rejected. Loving even without any expectation of you loving me back. That's love. I love you in sickness and in health. Finish it with me. Till richer or for poor, till death do us part. That's a hard word, isn't it? Right? It's a hard word. But that really is just a side of the agape love that we are called to live from. Whether you're married or not, it's just we are called to love selflessly, to give of ourselves sacrificially despite the return. because that's what Jesus did. For God, John 3:16, so loved the world that he showed that by giving his son, an extension of his very being in human form, to sacrifice himself because he loved. Fully knowing probably that a lot of people would reject him and not accept him. But he loved you. It says in Romans 5 that yet while you were still all mixed up and in bed with sin in your life, he died for you. He didn't die for you because you were perfect. He didn't die for you because he had everything lined up your ducks lined up in a row and all things were good in the hood. No, he died for you while you were a screw-up, a freak, a weirdo, and gave you an invitation to his wedding. And all you have to do is show up. And let me tell you, when you show up, you get the best food. Not like little hors d'oeuvres and little like sandwich meats. It's like full-on roasted lamb. That's the dinner. There's no vegans in heaven. No, I'm just joking. It's like, if you think about it, it's like, Jesus was called the lamb that was slain, the lamb that sacrificed himself. It wasn't like the tofu that was cooked in oil. It was the lamb. I'm just joking. I love vegan food. I love vegan restaurants. But he is the lamb. He isn't the tofu. But I want to give you 4 aspects, stay on track, Sean, 4 aspects that connect to loving in all things that are a reflection as to whether or not you love and understand this concept. Number 1, love bears all things. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 7, bears all things. I love it. Let me read it out of the TLB, which is the Living Bible translation. If you love someone, you will be loyal to him no matter what the cost. Is it up there? You will always believe in him, always expect the best of him, and always stand your ground in defending him. I love that. Supply, woman, she, whatever you want to that text. It's for all people, okay? Love looks like loyalty. Love looks like bearing up all things out of a place of loyalty. Now, that word bears, let me just give you a little bit of a working Greek definition for you, because we're going to unpack this. It's going to be quick. I'm going to give you this really quick, okay? So follow with me. That word bears means to place under a roof or to cover over with a roof. And it speaks of the one who's protecting something or someone, or the one who is being protected. So another translation could read like love protects. It looks like, let me draw you a picture for a second. When it says to love bears all things, it looks like, let's say you have something precious in your life that you really care about. You really feel like it's right in your life. It's like you put it in a safe, okay? And you lock that safe, and you're inside with it, protecting it, not letting the elements from the outside that would affect it get in. Not letting anything get out and not letting anything get in. It speaks of actually stopping water from flooding and getting in. When you protect someone, it's like you put them, it's like if I'm called to love my wife, who's not here, I don't know where she went. If I'm called to love my wife with everything, it's like I'm called to put her heart in a safe, protect it, make sure I cherish it, shroud it, in a sense, so to speak, shroud it with my love, making sure that the elements from the outside don't creep in and destroy that connection in that heart. I'm the protector. I'm not letting the elements, the water get in to damage it. I'm not letting the water damage happen. But it also speaks of you protecting the things that are important to you. When you're called to do something in life, great purpose, great vision, also often will come great resistance and opposition. And so when resistance and opposition come, you can be vulnerable and let all that opposition to take you out and damage all the goods that you've been called to deliver the world. Or you can protect what God's given you, the vision, the purpose, and make sure you don't let those elements touch it, so that you can fulfill the plan of God in your life. It bears under all things. It puts a roof over of protection, defend. It's like a defense to not let anything take you out. At the core, I love this. I'm just going to read it. I've already kind of said it. At the core of this meaning, of this Greek word, it actually denotes an activity or state which blocks entry from without or exit from within. One commentator, Moffat, says, it's slow to expose. Let me give you a little bit of a picture. You're out with your wife. You're out with a friend. You know stuff about your friend. Know stuff about your wife. You're having a good time. You're laughing. People are making jokes. And you start highlighting so-and-so's weakness, exposing their past, exposing things that maybe are a shame for them. That's the opposite of love. Love is so to explode. One of the words actually means to conceal, to protect, keep the healthy secret safe, so to speak. Love bears all things. Covers. I love this. It doesn't broadcast bad news. It goes the second mile to protect another person's reputation. It looks like loyalty. Proverbs 3 verse 3 to 4 says, don't lose your grip on love and loyalty, because you can't separate the two. Don't lose your love or your grip on love and loyalty. Tie them around your neck. Carve their initials on your heart. Earn a reputation for living well in God's eyes and the eyes of the people. You know, it's interesting because Jesus said it. The world will know that you are mine by your love for each other. What he was saying was, the world will know you are mine because of the agape love that you have for each other, that protects each other, that is loyal to each other till the end. Because he knows full well one of the greatest oppositions that will come against relationship and resist relationship is the temptation to tarnish each other's reputation and believe the worst of the people that you're closest to. Right? It happened to Judas. It happened to so many of those that were close to Jesus. It happens because the enemy knows if he can break up relationship, if he can break up covenant, if he can break up one of the most important things to God, he can break up the plan of God. That's what he believes. The plan of God is only as strong as the plan for unity. The Bible says how good and pleasant is it when everybody dwells together in unity, not in division. In unity. Love bears all things. Are you hearing me? 1 Peter 4 verse 8 said, above all, love each other deeply, because love covers, there it is again, it covers over a multitude of sins. You can't change someone's behavior with your disciplinary plan. But when you encounter real love, love begins to morph and transform the behavior. Discipline can only last for so long when it comes to altering someone's behavior. But when you get your love on and you begin to love well and love right, getting the agape love of God, when it's like how God did for you. God didn't come in and change your behavior. God's love just naturally transformed you from the inside out, and your behavior naturally began to change. You get what I'm saying? God is not into behavioral modification. He's into inward transformation. That naturally translates into behavioral changes. Your actions begin to look different. We need an encounter with his love. I thank God all the time for some of the people that are around our life, like Andrianne and Matt, who have been with us for quite some time, and I just feel like they wear this as like spiritual clothing, loyalty and love, because they've had every opportunity in seasons to listen to things that have been said and let their perspective of us tarnish our reputation. And they've had to choose over and over again, because you know what? Love just doesn't accept everything, but it always chooses to protect first. You know, like if somebody comes to me and complains about one of our leaders, I'm always going to err on the side of the loyalty to my leader first. Even if what they're saying is true, and we'll explore it, even if what they're saying is true, we will explore it, but I'm not going to agree right away, because you know how many things out there get twisted all the time? Some of the things that I've heard that were said about me were so funny. They were so out there and so random. I'm like, man, someone actually had the mind to make that up. That is just crazy. But love bears all things. Number 2, love believes all things. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, we're staying in verse 7. It doesn't bear all things only, it believes all things. This word believes is one of my favorite words, and it's the word pistis. Everyone say, I'm pistis. I'm pistis today.
I'm in faith today. You know what that word pistis means in the Greek? It means persuaded by God. Let me just give it quickly, a quick working definition for you. A divine persuasion of God that has nothing to do with your human effort. I'm just pistis today to step out of the boat and do this thing. I'm divinely persuaded by something outside of my human effort that I have the ability to conjure up within myself. It means to have confidence. In this specific context, okay? Like Augustine would say it like this: it's the quality of love that is believing the best about all people. And Paul's not saying, listen, it's not about being gullible and just believing everything everybody says. That's not what he's talking about. But believe the best first. Let that be what you err on first. You might have a discernment. You might think you have a discernment about a situation or individual. But if you're in agape love, hopefully your first intention, that first feeling is like, you know what? I might feel this and it may be somewhat accurate, but I'm going to look past what I feel in the moment and I'm going to choose to believe the best in this person until I'm proven otherwise. Some people would look at it like, believe the best until proven guilty. Don't just assume. If you break up the words, assume means to make an ass out of you and me. My mom taught me that. If you know my mom, that's not something she would teach me. But anyways, this is great for marriage. I think what I'm saying right now really affects marriages, it affects single people, affects relationships, friendships, co-working relationships. Everything I'm talking about right now really is about keeping relationships, sustaining relationship. I love this. One commentator, Barclay, writes this. He says that this kind of love, believing all things, this characteristic of believing has a twofold aspect. Read this with me. Number one, in relation to God, it means that love takes God at his word and can take every promise which begins whosoever and say, that's me. In other words, if I read it, I can have it. If it's in his word, I'm taking him at his word. Whether he speaks a word to me or I see it in his word, this kind of love that believes all things is to take him at his word. If he said it, it will be. The problem is that where we get all confused and messed up is in the process of what is supposed to be not being. We get confused and say, well, it must not be. Right? We let our circumstance or the lack of progress speak to us and be the loudest voice in our ear rather than his word that is eternal. It takes a faith, a divine pistis, a divine persuasion to believe him at his word. I'm teaching a little bit this morning. I might be overwhelming some of you. Are you okay? Okay? I don't want to coddle your eardrum today. I want to give you something concrete to leave with. So it believes all things. Another point that Barclay writes, commentator, says this: it also is in relation to our fellow men. It means that love always believes the best about other people. Once again, not being gullible, but letting your first intention or your first response be agape, selfless love. Selfless love. To believe all things is to apply selfless love, even when you have some reasons to believe there's something going on. I remember, I think one part of this really strikes me because when I first gave my life to Jesus, I was 18, turning 19, and I would read the Bible, and I'm like, man, this is crazy. Like, I was so excited about what I would see in the Bible and hear things about the Holy Spirit, and I remember when I first read that, I was like, man, there's another guy coming. Like, he hasn't come yet. I didn't know he was already in me. The Holy Spirit was already in me, and I was just so excited to step out and try the stuff that I was reading about. So I'd go back to the club, I'd go back to the bar, I'd sit at the bar and just share my story with people. I mean, it's crazy, like some of the stories that happened in that time frame of my life. I'd have like six or seven, 8 guys, big guys. I'm like an 18-year-old, and like I have the Bible on the bar, and they're all listening to my God story. I didn't know the Bible then. I didn't know anything about the Bible, to be honest with you. I actually didn't even know. I had not memorized any verses, didn't have a tract in my back pocket. The Romans 5 verse 8 says, yet while we were still sinners, Christ died. Romans 10 says, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, believe in your heart, raise from the dead, then you'll be saved. Like I didn't have all that memorized. I just had a testimony of God changed my life, man. Like changed my life, and he's a good friend. He's a friend. He's taught me about friendship, real friendship. I'd share my story, and people would be like amazed, and things would happen. People would encounter God in these places. I used to love talking to drunk people. You know why? Because literally there was a time frame, 5 out of 10 people I'd see instantly sober up. I've seen people drop their drugs, flush their cocaine down the sewer because they instantly sobered up when we prayed for them on a trip, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so real. Like, what the heck? And they drop their drugs in the sewer. I mean, I've seen it happen. I've watched guys go into their house and find every ounce of cocaine they can find, and I watch them flush it down the sink. Because the drug they just encountered, his name is Jesus, it keeps on giving. The drug that keeps on giving, it's a high that keeps on giving. They encounter that high, the God of the Most High God, and they never want to go back to the old high. You know, when that happens and they experience that true love like that, it changes everything. But those things would happen because I would just believe him at his word. God wants to heal the sick. Okay, let's pray for the sick, even if I see no sick healed. Even if it takes you 500 people before you see one person healed, you keep praying for them because you believe. You take God at his word, believes all things. I just believe what he says. Even though my circumstances might say otherwise, I believe what he says. I'm going to keep praying. I'm going to keep knocking. I'm going to keep asking until that door is open to me. Matthew 7, verse 7. It's a promise. If you keep on asking, keep on seeking, keep on knocking, eventually it will be open to you. It may take you 2 years. It may take you 3 years after you prayed and fasted for your future spouse, and it hasn't happened 15 years after you started praying, but it will happen. If it's his word, it will happen. If he's promised you, it will happen. But not on your timeline. Not within your expectations sometimes. You're called to keep on positioning yourself, believing in all things. Number 3, love hopes all things. Is this hitting you? Are you getting something from this? Love hopes all things. The latter part of this verse, not only does it bear all things, believes all things, it hopes all things. That word for hope means to actively wait for God's fulfillment. It's connected to the previous point I just said, to actively step out to hope. You know, we can actually have faith without hope. You know that? You could have faith without hope. Faith for a moment, I'm divinely persuaded, but hope lasts for the long haul. I keep on hoping until the day. I'm not just waiting on my couch, eating potato chips, watching The Bachelorette, waiting for God to just show up and do something. No. I am actively waiting by stepping out and pursuing the things he's put on my path to pursue. Waiting in God's economy looks like activity. There are times to be still, Psalms 46 verse 10, and know that he is God, be in rest. But in God, when God talks about waiting, most of the time he's talking about an active form of waiting. Those who wait upon the Lord will be renewed in strength, will mount up on wings as eagles. That has nothing to do with sitting on a floor in silence. That word is an active waiting, an active moving, an active stepping out. That's what hope looks like. I keep on hoping. I keep on hoping. I keep on hoping. Hope is so important. Hope is so important. You know why it's so important? There's a verse that actually says, hope in Proverbs, hope deferred makes the heart sick. As soon as hope is deferred a few times, you stop hoping. And when you stop hoping, your heart gets sick. When your heart gets sick, you have no more faith left. Full of unbelief. Active hope keeps the heart alive. Active hope keeps the faith strong. To believe if God's given you a promise. Paul writes this about hope so many times, over and over again. It says here in Romans 8, verse 28, one of my favorite scriptures. And if you're in this room right now and you're going through something that's not working out for you and it feels like hope is getting deferred, this scripture is for you. Because whatever you're going through, this is a promise. This is a promise that can be connected to point number 2, to believe all things. Take him at his word. It says in verse 28 of chapter 8 of Romans, and we know with great confidence that God, who is deeply concerned about us, causes all things, everyone say all things. There it is again, all things. The things that aren't happening for you, the things that are happening in you and around you, the storms that are coming against you, the have-nots, the wishes, the things that you thought were going to turn out and didn't turn out, the job opportunity you thought you were going to have but didn't get. Somehow, all of the hard things, all of the things that aren't happening to you, or all things, somehow, if you can learn to keep your hope on and learn to keep your love in check, somehow all things will turn out for good for you. It says here, because all things will work together as a plan for good, for those who love God, to those who are called according to his plan and purpose. All things, you guys, a promise, eventually will work if you keep your love on, if you keep your trust on, if you keep your hope in check. All things, the things that are ticking you off right now, will eventually turn around and something good will come out of it. But it takes a mature person to find the good in an abstract painting. It takes a matured eye, an artistic eye, to look at an abstract painting and pull the good out of it. It's the same way a lot of our lives are abstract. It's abstract art. It makes no sense to the mind. But as we grow in God and get more mature in God, we can look at the abstract painting over our life and say, wow, that's got really good. Well, I see that now. I see it. I'm paying attention. It doesn't make sense here, but it makes sense here. So I'm gonna position myself to keep my hope on and pull that good out of that abstract painting that's over my life right now. Good's gonna come out of this season. Remember that. Life is like an abstract painting. It takes a trained eye to appreciate what they see when looking at it. You got to train your eye. You got to train your spirit. Number 4, love endures all things. Love endures all things. I love the picture of this because the word endure literally means to remain under a load. And this uniquely happens by God's power. There's a grace that comes on you to remain under the load. In this context, it also means to bear up under persecutions, maltreatment from open enemies, and professed friends. Professed friends. People that say they're loyal to you, but there's something going on. This is the kind of stuff that we need to learn to live and endure in. Because these are the things that take us out. You know that one of the number one reasons why people leave church, you know what it is? People. And then they attach the people, the painful part of the people, to their perspective of God. And say, if people are like that, that must be what God is like. I left the church because so-and-so, they're all a bunch of hypocrites. Yeah, well, so are you. We're all a bunch of hypocrites at times. There is an unhealthy expectation that imprisons people to be perfect, and when they're not, their human nature is used as an assault weapon against them, and then what happens is they then use that as an excuse to reject God. And it's sad, but it's one of the number one reasons why people leave community is because of people. But the reality of it is people will do stupid things. People are going to offend you. People are going to betray you. People are going to, even your closest friends at times. If it happened to Jesus, it's going to happen to you. Happened to Jesus' right-hand guy. We expect leadership to be perfect. The perfect leader named Jesus went through the same thing. But we don't expect him to have a different track record. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. To endure means to remain under the load even when people mess it all up. In secular Greek, I love it, it was a military term used of an army's holding a vital position at all costs. It also means the idea to continue in an activity despite resistance and opposition. Do you hear that? To remain constant despite resistance and opposition. To endure. You have that picture? Throw that picture up on the screen. It's a great picture of, I think that's actually Arnold on the left. It's a great picture of what it means to endure, but something so important about this picture, I don't know, it's one thing to endure alone, but it's a whole other picture, a whole other reality when you realize you're not alone, and you're enduring because you trust the one who put the weight on for you. It's very different. When you have a coach who's helping you, who knows your capacity, who you trust, who you put trust in. Although you will doubt, although you will have unbelief at times, although you will say, I can't do this. When you have that relationship, a good relationship with your coach, you start putting stock and trusting that he has your best interest at heart and he's going to help you win. And when you have that coach standing beside you, it gives you this ability and this tenacity and this perseverance to bear under the load and keep on going for as long as he tells you to. Take the coach out of the picture, you have no reason to stay in the game. But Jesus, you see, is like our coach. He's put us in situations. He's put us in circumstances. He's put us with purpose in our job, our career, in our marriage, in our friendships, in the co-working relationships that we have on the street that we live in and on, and all these situations, and the family that he's given us. He's put us in these places. And in this church, if you call this church your home, he's put you here. And it's in this place that you learn what endurance is. You learn how to bear under the load, but the only way that you will win in bearing under the load is trusting that Jesus is with you while that load is on top of you. And that you know at any moment, if you can't carry it anymore, he comes in and picks it up off of you, helps you put it back on the rack. You got to trust your coach. This is where faith comes in. This is where love comes in. How many have wanted to give up? At some level, at some time of your life, if you haven't yet, you're going to want to give up in something that's really important or was important to you at one point. You want to give up in your marriage. You want to give up in your relationships, your good friendships, church, your career. You'll want to give up at some level. That's just normal life. Let me talk to the millennials for a second. That's just normal life, okay? You'll want to give up. Or the Z generation. It's just normal life. You'll want to give up. But really, all of us, no matter what age or stage you find yourself in, we will all struggle with this until the day we die. In fact, if you don't want to give up and you want to stop enduring, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. You're not growing enough. The only way you grow in muscle formation is by literally living in pain. These guys that are bearing the load, they're in pain. If it's easy, they're not growing. If it's hard, they're growing. If they're screaming, they're probably growing. If they're groaning, they're growing. You know, you go to the gym. How many's been at the gym and those guys are like, you know, now I have a little bit more of respect for these guys. I didn't before I made fun of them. Now, when I start hearing things come out of my mouth, I realize, wow, you know, it's normal. Because when you're in pain, usually your response is some sort of sound. Let me just tell you, if you're not making the sounds in this season, you're not advancing. It should be hurting like hell. If God's given you a purpose that's bigger than yourself, it will hurt like hell. You'll be burned 10,000 times, betrayed over and over again, tarnished reputation. But when you have your coach standing beside you, you'll win at every squat. You'll win at every turn.